What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm doing something a little bit different. I kind of did a video like this once in the past. Today I'm just doing it because, well, I got nothing else to do today. So basically what this video is going to entail is how to configure a basic React project from scratch without using Create React App. I'm going to show you kind of the basic file structure that I like to use when I start a brand new project that's built in React. And I'm going to show you how to do things like configure a basic Webpack file. I'm going to show you all the dependencies that you'll need to get started. And I'm going to show you how to set up a basic Express server so that you can run your application in the browser. Typically, that's something that's done automatically when you utilize Create React App. But if you're starting it from scratch, you will kind of need to build your own little basic server application to serve up your files. So anyways, that's kind of my intro here. So let's get right into starting out this project. So as you can see, I have an empty folder here. This right here is localhost. You can see it's not running. So what we're going to do first is we're going to start creating our basic file structure. So I like to start with either a source or a client directory. We're also going to need a public directory, which is where our index.html file is going to live. This is also where our compiled files, after they run through Webpack, this is where they will end up. And then let's see, we're also going to create a server directory. Okay, and then we're gonna need a package.json file. So an easy way to get this started is to do npm init-y, which will just create kind of a simple basic one here. Nothing too crazy, but this is just our simple little, it never seems to like these capital letters here. So I'm just gonna get rid of those. Okay, so now we're going to start installing some of our dependencies here. So we're going to do npm I, which is shorthand for npm install, and then we're going to do --save -dev, and this is where we're going to install babel/cli, babel/core, babel/preset-env, at babel/preset-react, and then we're also going to need Babel loader. We're going to need Webpack and Webpack-CLI. So the CLI stuff is just like the command line interface tools for those packages, so that we can utilize them properly. We can go ahead and replace this. So we're going to need some basic scripts here. Basically, I'm just going to call this one Webpack, and this is the basic script that will allow us to execute Webpack in the terminal once we set up our config file. So we're going to do Webpack, and then I just use a simple command. I like to use webpack-d-watch, and this will basically set up Webpack to automatically rerun every time that it detects a change in your files using that watch command. So this helps a lot with kind of streamlining your development process, because you no longer have to run the Webpack command every time that you make a change. It will automatically run for you and recompile your code base. So I did kind of already film a part of this clip here, but it appears that I made a typo in my developer dependencies somewhere, so none of them installed. But I will reiterate this. This is my basic Webpack script for running Webpack once it's installed and configured. Using this watch flag right here will basically allow Webpack to automatically recompile your files anytime that it detects a change, so that you don't have to go retype the command into the terminal every time that you make a change to one of your files, it will do that automatically. I'm going to kind of shortcut here with installing basic dependencies here. So a couple things we're going to need here. This is a little configuration repo guideline that was written by a friend of mine that I like to just copy some of these commands from. So we're going to, but yeah, this kind of just helps me not have to type all this out. But so we're going to install React and React DOM. And then we're going to install all of our Babel dependencies, which is Babel core, Babel CLI, Babel preset env, and Babel preset React. And then we're going to install our Webpack dependencies here. And we'll just wait for that to finish. Okay, good. So now we have our Babel, Webpack, and React dependencies. We're also going to install, Express, which Express.js is the node framework that we will use for building our basic server so that we can run our application in the browser. Clear that. Cool, so now we have all of our dependencies here. So we will go ahead and create our webpack.config.js file. So I do already have, oh, I created that as a directory. Oops. Well, no worries. We can delete that and then make it again. Webpack.config.js. Okay, cool. So to help streamline this video, I did already write this out as what we're going to need here. So I will walk through this a little bit. Basically, this up here is just saving my source directory to a variable for shorter reference. But anyways, so we have a module.exports here, and what this is doing is this is the entry file that our Webpack is going to be looking for, where it's going to start handling our files, which is going to be index.js. I have not made this file yet, but it will reside here in the source directory. The output file is going to be where our compiled files are output to. So this will compile all of our JSX files into a single bundle.js file, which will be imported into our index.html. Down here, module rules. This is basically describing what types of files we're looking for in our Webpack. So this is basically telling Webpack that we're looking to compile all of our JSX files, and then it's going to utilize Babel and everything else to do that. So this is just a super simple setup. This won't handle anything like CSS modules, images, anything like this. Strictly handles JSX files. So there are a lot of resources on the web where you can find out how to add other rule sets to your Webpack files if you need to handle things like CSS files or any other types of files, basically. Okay, so now that we have our little Webpack set up here, what we can do now is we can start creating some basic files here. So let's go to our source directory, and we're going to create our index.jsx file. And this, as I mentioned, is going to be the entry point for Webpack. So this is the file Webpack is looking for. So we're going to create our initial little entry point file here. So we're going to import React from React, import React DOM from React DOM, and then we need to actually don't need to do that. It's going to be React DOM.render, and this statement here is basically this is what's going to send our React application to the HTML file. So document dot get element by ID, and we're just going to call it root, which I created this file, but I have not set it up yet. So we're just going to create a div right here, and we're going to give this an ID of root. So this right here is going to be the target element in our HTML file that will contain all of our React elements when they get rendered, which is basically what this command right here is doing. So now that we have our basic index file set up here, let's go create another directory inside of our source directory, and we will call this components. This is one of the ways that I like to use to organize my my file structure a little better. So inside of this, since this is going to be a super simple app, I'm only going to build one component here. I'm just going to put the component itself in here, but when I have larger applications, I like to build more folders inside of this, and basically I'll have one folder for each component, and then I like to put all of the files related to that component inside of that folder, whether it be the component file itself, the JSX file, any CSS modules files, test files, anything. I put them all in the folders that are related to that component, so that it's a lot easier to maintain my file structure. So we're going to call this app.jsx, and then we'll just create a basic little test component here. So we're going to import React from React, and then we're going to create our component structure here. We're just going to do a basic functional component here, and then we need to make sure that it gets exported here at the bottom so that we can import it into our index.jsx. So we're going to do return, and then we'll just put a div in here, and we'll write test. Actually, you know what? Let's make this a little easier to see here when we get it rendered. So we'll make this an H1. So I know some people are going to be sticklers about this, so we'll go ahead and put some semicolons here. So anyways, this completes our basic little app component. So we can come back here to our index file, and we can import it. So we can do import app from our relative path.jsx. And now our application here has an app component in it that contains an H1 element that says test. We can't see this yet because, one, we have not run Webpack yet, and two, we have not built out our server yet. So the next step that we're going to take here, now that we have our basic little application, we do need to actually go here back to our HTML file, and since we know that Webpack is going to call our compiled JavaScript bundle.js, as we saw in our Webpack config file, because that's what we called it right here, the output file name bundle.js. So now that we have this set up, that should be completed. We shouldn't have to worry about that anymore. Now we can go to our server directory, and we can create a new file called server.js. So this is where Express comes in to build our basic server, and this is actually incredibly simple. So all we're going to do is we're going to set a variable, call it express equals require express, and then we're going to set another variable, call it app equals, and then we're going to invoke express. And then down here we need to do app.use express.static, and we're going to set this to public. So what this is doing is this is basically serving up our public directory, which contains our index.html file. This is going to look for an index.html file inside of our public directory, and serve it up as basically a static file. And this is kind of like the equivalent of doing an app.get and then setting it to the root directory. and then serving up those files the same way. It's just kind of like a shorter way of doing it, but doing express.static by default goes to the root directory of just slash. So that's going to handle serving up our files. So all we have to do now is set up our server to actually run. So we're just going to set this up on port 3000. And then we'll just do a simple console.log and just say server is listening on port 3000. Okay. Now, if I try to run this, well, I'm probably going to get errors due to the fact that I haven't run Webpack yet. So let's go ahead and run Webpack. And that reminds me, I actually need to add another script here for my server. So we'll just call it start. And then we will do nodemon, which is kind of the equivalent of like doing watch on Webpack. Nodemon will detect anytime that there is a change to your files, and it will automatically restart your server. If you just run it as node instead of nodemon, your server will not automatically restart, and it will cause you a lot of headaches because you'll have to go and restart it manually every time that you make a change to your files. So in testing, it's okay to use nodemon. Whenever your application is actually deployed, I would not recommend it. So we'll do nodemon server/server.js. So now we will go ahead and run Webpack. So you can see here that Webpack has successfully run, and it has created this bundle.js file here that is insanely long, and you do not need to worry about what's inside of it. So now that that is completed, we can run our start command here. Let's see, got an error here. So I think that I actually found what my issue was here. It looks like I have a typo in the name of my server file. It is not sever. So, okay, that was one issue. Looks like I still have another issue here somewhere. Oh, the other issue right there. Okay, so I guess I actually did fix the issue. For whatever reason, it just wanted me to restart my server command. So now that I've done that, I can go ahead and run my localhost 3000 here, and we can see our test component here in the browser. So that's really it as far as doing a basic file structure setup for a React project. Obviously, like, I did run into a couple little issues here and there, but those have been worked out. This is just the basic file structure that I like to use when starting a project, and then I grow that structure from here and kind of adapt it as necessary, especially like I kind of mentioned with my component folders and how I like to structure those. And I definitely typically have to modify the Webpack file as I go. You don't necessarily need to configure a project from scratch like this, depending on what you're doing. Unless you just want the experience of doing it, you can use Create React App, but in some situations you don't want to use that, and you want to configure your files as the way that you, or in a way that you would prefer them. This is also a great way of getting used to working with Webpack and configuring that file from scratch. I do personally like to use a lot of internet resources for kind of structuring that file, because it is really picky about how you type out your Webpack files, and they have to follow that, you know, specific format, and it's just insanely difficult to remember. So I like to have a couple different resources saved for doing that basic setup, and then I will kind of modify it as I go. But that's really it, guys. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments below, and I will try my best to answer those questions for you. If there's any other type of videos related to these topics or other topics that you would like to see, drop that in the comments below too. Other than that, guys, thanks for watching, and happy coding.